We counted down the 8 most disturbing shark attacks ever documented. Incidents where even seasoned experts, safety measures, and family routines offered no protection from nature's perfect killers. From routine dawn surf sessions that turned lethal to catastrophic public tragedies, each entry exposed how swiftly a shark could turn a swimmer into prey, severing arteries and lives in under 90 seconds. Which attack stood as the most chilling reminder of ocean risk? We began the countdown with number 8. At 6:12 in the morning, 31-year-old Liam Carter paddled out alone at Breakers Point, the local surf break he had mastered since his teens. With over a decade of dawn patrols, Carter was known for his confidence and skill, rarely missing a morning even during the early light when most surfers stayed ashore. The water was glassy, surf conditions were flawless, and the only sound was the rhythmic splash of his hands cutting through the surface. Bull sharks, drawn to shallow sandbars at daybreak, often hunted in these hours, an established pattern in marine biology, but one Carter considered just another risk of the sport. As he reached the lineup 180 meters from shore, a single bull shark struck from below. The initial bite measured 29 centimeters across, and it severed his femoral artery. Within 90 seconds, Carter lost 1.7 liters of blood. He tried to paddle in, but hypovolemic shock set in almost immediately. By the time other surfers spotted him drifting, he was unresponsive. Paramedics pronounced him dead on the sand. It was a stark reminder that no amount of experience can outmatch a predator built for silent clinical efficiency. At 10:22 in the morning, Mark Ellison, age 36, drifted just beyond the resort's swim buoys, balanced atop a bright orange inflatable ring. His wife and 2 young children watched from the sand, waving as he floated in the turquoise water 55 meters from shore. Ellison, a software engineer from Toronto, had booked the family's first tropical holiday to celebrate their anniversary. He rarely swam, but the resort's marked zone and netting promised safety. The water was warm and clear, with dozens of guests nearby. Moments later, a sudden thrash broke the calm. A tiger shark, drawn by surface splashing, surged upward and latched onto Ellison's lower torso. The force flipped him from the float. Witnesses described a flash of gray and a spreading cloud of red. The shark's jaws left multiple deep lacerations across his abdomen and legs. Ellison disappeared beneath the surface, reappearing briefly before being pulled under again. His family's screams carried across the beach as lifeguards launched a rescue, but recovery was impossible. His body was found 4 hours later, nearly 1 kilometer down the coast. The attack was sudden and devastating. The resort faced a lawsuit for inadequate netting and emergency response. In the aftermath, the entire resort chain overhauled its shark safety protocols, installing reinforced barriers and real-time monitoring systems. For Ellison's family, the trauma was permanent, a public reminder that even marked swim zones offer no guarantee against a predator evolved for sudden, lethal efficiency. At 7:34 in the morning, 22-year-old Rachel Kim powered through the cold Atlantic, 1.2 kilometers offshore, training for her 3rd marathon swim. A college athlete with Olympic dreams, she wore a bright cap and a GPS tracker, shadowed by a kayak support crew. The water was clear and the surface was calm, but a gray seal colony less than half a mile away teemed with movement, prime hunting ground for great whites. Event organizers had reviewed safety protocols that morning, and the route, a familiar circuit, had never seen an incident. Kim's stroke never faltered until the breach. A great white, estimated at more than 4 meters long, struck from below with a vertical surge, its jaw span 35 centimeters. The impact lifted her clear of the water and teeth closed around her torso. The kayak team, just meters away, heard a single scream and saw a sudden bloom of red. Her wetsuit split at the midsection. The shark's bite severed major vessels, causing catastrophic hemorrhage. Blood loss reached nearly 3 liters within minutes. Despite the crew's rapid response, deploying a rescue float and radioing for emergency extraction, Kim lost consciousness before they could pull her aboard. She was pronounced dead 17 minutes after the strike, never regaining awareness. The incident halted the event permanently. Forensic analysis confirmed classic breach mechanics, a vertical attack with massive tissue trauma and blood dispersal that drew secondary predators within minutes. The tragedy exposed the limits of even the best prepared support systems. Athletic skill and safety planning offered no defense against a predator evolved to kill with clinical efficiency. At 9:18 a.m., Dr. Emily Rourke, age 29, prepared to descend for her third observation dive of the morning off Seal Rock, a research site known for its dense pinniped population and frequent great white activity. Rourke held a Doctor of Philosophy in Marine Biology from UC Santa Cruz. She specialized in shark sensory behavior and had logged over 600 hours in open water. Her team had set up a reinforced cage, but Rourke insisted on a cage-free dive, citing the need for unobstructed footage and first-hand data on natural predatory patterns. The water temperature held steady at 14 degrees Celsius, visibility stretched to nearly 20 meters, and the surface was calm. Electronic tags monitored local shark movement, and recent pings showed no immediate threats. Rourke entered the water at a depth of 44 feet, trailed by a single safety diver. Minutes into her descent, a sudden surge disrupted the tranquility. Without warning, a great white, later estimated at 4.7 meters, breached from below. Its jaws closed over Rourke's upper torso, the bite radius measured at 41 centimeters. The force shattered her ribcage and severed major arteries. The attack lasted less than 10 seconds. Blood dispersal triggered a secondary approach, but the shark did not return. Rourke's body was recovered by her team within 4 minutes, but the trauma was incompatible with life. Catastrophic exsanguination and massive organ damage left no possibility of resuscitation. Forensic analysis confirmed the breach was triggered by vibrations and electrical signals from equipment, a phenomenon Rourke had published on months earlier. The incident prompted an immediate review of field safety standards. Within weeks, her institution mandated cage use for all future dives involving apex predator research. Rourke's death became a case study in the limits of expertise, underscoring that knowledge and preparation offer no immunity when the hunter became the hunted. At 11:10 a.m., 48-year-old Stephen Delaney suited up for a solo abalone dive off Cape Meridian, a stretch of rugged coast known for rich shellfish beds and frequent great white sightings. Delaney was a third-generation diver who had logged more than 20 years in these waters. Economic pressure was mounting, the season had been slow, and working alone meant a bigger share of the catch. Regulations required a buddy system, but Delaney, like many veterans, weighed risk against reward and entered the water solo. Visibility was fair, the current steady, and the depth at his chosen spot measured 33 feet. Delaney descended and began harvesting abalone along the rocky bottom, his catch bag slowly filling. Minutes passed before the first sign of trouble, a sudden jolt from below. A great white, later estimated at over 4 meters in length, delivered a crushing bite to Delaney's lower torso. The initial attack severed arteries and fractured his pelvis. The shark did not retreat. Over the next 7 minutes, Delaney sustained multiple bites as the predator circled back, drawn by blood dispersing through the water. His air supply, already limited by solo diving, dwindled as he struggled to reach the surface. The attack was prolonged and clinically severe. Delaney's absence triggered a search when he failed to check in at the dock. It took 19 hours for recovery teams to locate his body, still tethered to dive weights, bearing extensive bite wounds and evidence of repeated trauma. Forensic analysis documented at least 3 separate bite patterns, confirming a prolonged attack sequence. Commercial diving audits revealed a pattern of non-compliance with buddy protocols. especially among experienced divers facing financial stress. The aftermath brought swift regulatory change, including mandatory electronic tracking for solo divers, stricter enforcement of buddy rules, and temporary closure of high-risk grounds. Delaney's death underscored how occupational shortcuts could amplify the lethal risks already present in the domain of apex predators. At 2:46 in the afternoon, 33-year-old Miguel Santos surfaced beside his spearfishing float, a string of fresh snapper clipped to his weight belt. Santos, a seasoned freediver known for his calm under pressure, had spent the morning hunting in the deep channels off Coral Head, a site prized for both its fish and its lurking predators. The water was clear, with visibility stretching nearly 20 meters, but the tide had just turned, stirring currents and carrying scent far from the reef. Local regulations permitted solo diving, but most spearfishers preferred to work in pairs. Santos, confident in his skills, worked alone. As he reloaded his spear, blood from the morning catch pulsed steadily into the water. Scientific studies showed that even a small amount of fish blood, less than a cup, could create an olfactory plume detectable by sharks over 60 meters away. Within minutes, Santos's position became the epicenter of a feeding signal, the current dispersing scent in all directions. A sudden flicker below caught his eye. Multiple bull sharks, drawn by the blood, approached in a loose formation. Bull sharks were notorious for aggressive pack-feeding behavior when triggered by prey distress. The first shark struck from behind, jaws clamping onto Santos's thigh, with a bite radius measured later at over 30 centimeters. As he struggled to break free, a second shark seized his other leg. The attack lasted less than 90 seconds. Witnesses aboard a nearby fishing boat reported seeing a roiling mass of gray shapes and a spreading red bloom. By the time a distress flare was fired, the sharks had inflicted catastrophic injuries. Both legs and part of the lower torso were severed. Blood loss was estimated at over 2.2 liters, resulting in rapid hypovolemic shock and loss of consciousness before help arrived. Rescue boats reached the site 7 minutes after the initial strike, but recovery was limited to equipment and partial remains. Forensic analysis confirmed simultaneous bites from at least 3 sharks, a rare documented case of pack predation on a human. The aftermath prompted immediate changes. Spearfishing regulations now required catch storage in sealed floats and mandated the use of electronic shark deterrent devices. Santos's death stood as a stark warning that human activity could trigger a cascade of predatory behavior, transforming a routine dive into a feeding frenzy within moments. At 4:28 p.m., 14-year-old Jacob Ramirez waded into the surf at Crescent River Beach, his boogie board trailing behind on a nylon leash. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden haze across water still roiling from a thunderstorm earlier that day. Jacob was a freshman track athlete and honor roll student, visiting from Kansas with his parents, and it was his first time seeing the ocean and his first time feeling the tug of salt water around his legs. He was waist-deep, just 0.9 meters from the sandy bottom, and he laughed as a wave broke over his board while his mother snapped photos from a striped towel nearby. The river mouth, only 30 meters upstream, churned with runoff, clouding the water and masking movement below the surface. Bull sharks were known for their tolerance of brackish water and often followed such plumes inland, drawn by the scent of fish and debris. That afternoon, Marine Patrol logs would later confirm multiple shark sightings had been reported near the estuary, but no warnings reached the public before dusk. At 16:30, a sudden surge beneath Jacob's feet split the calm. Witnesses recalled a single violent thrash, the water exploding as a bull shark, estimated at over 2 meters, struck from below. The bite radius, measured later at 27 centimeters, closed around his lower pelvis and thighs. The force drove Jacob under and severed major pelvic vessels in a single motion. Blood billowed through the murk as the shark released and vanished downstream. Jacob surfaced, screaming, and tried to cling to his board. His parents reached him seconds later, pulling him to shore as lifeguards sprinted across the sand. Emergency responders arrived within 4 minutes and applied tourniquets and pressure dressings. Despite advanced pediatric trauma care, the blood loss was overwhelming. Arterial hemorrhage from both femoral and iliac vessels left little hope. Jacob lost consciousness 11 minutes after the strike and was pronounced dead at 16:56, 26 minutes after the attack began. The aftermath rippled through the community. Crescent River Beach closed indefinitely, and local authorities fast-tracked the installation of shark nets and a real-time warning system. Pediatric trauma experts reviewed emergency protocols, highlighting the near impossibility of survival in such cases without immediate vascular control. Jacob's death, witnessed by dozens, including his parents, became a catalyst for sweeping changes in coastal safety. A stark reminder that even shallow water offers no refuge from an apex predator's reach. At 3:11 in the afternoon, 27-year-old Daniel Reyes stood at the shoreline of Southport Beach, scanning the crowded surf. A certified lifeguard and off-duty EMT, Reyes was known for his calm under pressure and his unwavering sense of responsibility. Friends described him as the first to volunteer and the last to leave, always alert to danger even on his rare days off. That afternoon, the beach was packed, families and children and tourists all enjoying the late summer sun. The water was unusually murky from a recent storm, with visibility dropping below half a meter, a known risk factor for shark activity in the area. Sudden shouts broke the routine. 50 meters offshore, a swimmer's frantic arms signaled distress. Witnesses later recalled a brief flash of a gray dorsal fin, followed by a spreading patch of red. Without hesitation, Reyes grabbed a rescue can and sprinted into the surf, reaching the victim in less than 90 seconds. As he pulled the struggling swimmer onto the float, a large shark, later identified as a great white, struck from below. The initial bite severed both of Reyes's legs at mid-thigh, a bilateral avulsion injury with a bite radius exceeding 40 centimeters. The force of the attack caused massive vascular and abdominal trauma, with blood loss estimated at over 2 liters in under a minute. Lifeguards and bystanders rushed to assist, dragging both men to shore. Reyes remained conscious, directing tourniquet placement and instructing responders on hemorrhage control. Emergency crews arrived within 6 minutes, initiating advanced trauma protocols and rapid transport to the regional trauma center. Surgeons began a 6-hour operation in a final attempt to control bleeding and repair organ damage. Despite aggressive intervention, Reyes suffered irreversible shock and multi-organ failure, succumbing to his injuries just after 9 in the evening. The swimmer he rescued survived with deep lacerations and was discharged days later. Investigators documented the attack sequence, noting the shark's predatory focus on the rescuer during the extraction. Forensic analysis of Reyes's wounds matched classic breach mechanics, a single catastrophic strike consistent with great white predation. Public response was immediate and far-reaching. Southport Beach closed for 2 weeks as authorities reviewed protocols. The incident prompted nationwide reforms, including mandatory deployment of drone surveillance for shark detection, advanced lifeguard trauma training, and the adoption of multi-victim response protocols. Reyes's death was honored with a permanent memorial overlooking the surf, his name inscribed as both lifeguard and hero. The legacy of this attack extended beyond a single tragedy. Drone patrols, now standard on high-risk beaches, reduced shark-human encounters by over 60% in pilot studies. Lifeguard certification now required advanced hemorrhage control and rescue coordination under predatory threat. The story of Daniel Reyes endured as a stark reminder. Even the most prepared, even those who risk everything for others, remain vulnerable in the domain of nature's perfect killer. Across all 8 cases, one pattern stood out. In the ocean, human experience, preparation, or heroism offered no shield against an apex predator evolved for efficiency. Shark attacks remained rare, but when they struck, the outcome was swift and final, rewriting safety protocols and haunting communities. Entering the sea meant entering their domain, where nature's rules, not ours, decided the outcome. Stay vigilant and respect the unknown.